Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Thursday, May 2nd, 2019. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. You'll see here that we had a fairly bearish day in the previous session here to start May. Previous session's high and close both offered, but really the sell-off really came in the last 15 to 30 minutes of the day, and price sold off here, closing below the previous session's low, an outside day down. So it's a bearish outside day. That's very bearish, obviously. And what you're seeing right now is the pullback early in after hours and pre-market trading, and that is offering opportunity for bears to defend for a shot at extending the downside action here to perhaps 2900 and perhaps even through that zone. So if you're going to take the previous month's high and close offered that quickly, you easily see a test at 2900, the midpoint of the previous month, with a shot to go down here and grab the previous month's low. That's 2844s. So for the most part, right now, the way that this is playing out looks quite bearish here, and we could be looking at quite a bit more downside action, especially if these multiple day lows are taken out. These lows have been in play here for at least a week plus, around the 29.15s, 29.14s. Any push through that zone could really open up quite a bit of downside here. Again, expecting some sort of weakness here to begin the month of May, but we got to see, can the bulls defend 2900 and keep it bid, or are we going to keep heading lower toward the previous month's low? So keep an eye on this price action as we head into the rest of the day. The NQ here, very similar as well. You can see here an outside day down yesterday as well. After the late sell-off, you can see price was above the previous high, closed below the previous low. That's a bearish outside day, and now again in pre-market trading, you're seeing price pull back toward the midpoint of that range and showing initial signs of weakness. That could provide quite a bit more downside price action ahead. We have our midpoint here, and then we have the previous month's low right there. So taking the previous month's close offered and dropping away again could open up quite a bit more weakness. Now, when we've seen this type of price action here recently, we've seen buyers come in and we've seen another rotation higher. The difference now, as I've mentioned before, is we are now at highs. These are new highs right here. So at new highs and a failure to see a continuation, that could finally spell a bigger, broader pullback. So again, up here near highs, if there's a failure to hold that midpoint from last month, that could really lead to quite a bit more weakness here. So again, keep an eye on that price action. Any push through recent lows here, 77.30s, could open up a quick retest at 76.50 with a shot to see a rotation all the way back to the previous month's low at 74.29. Here's a look at crude oil. From crude oil standpoint here, again, this one had already shown quite a bit of weakness. I mentioned the previous day here that we had quite a rejection. That was Monday's range here, the 64 and change, and that is after price dropped down here. We were not able to see much lift in the previous session, instead seeing rejection off the 64s, the midpoint of that range, and now we're seeing kind of a drop down here today. So again, we're on a counter trend type of move right now within the overall uptrend. Is this a spot where we see a bigger, broader pullback, or are we going to bounce at some point? The fact that we are kind of sitting at the midpoint of last month's range and taking it offered suggests that we're headed back to the previous month's low, right above 60 bucks there. And that would be in line with kind of our estimate that we'd get about a 6-handle range over the next 10 days. After we got the breakout from this narrow 10-day range. So far we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days, and we have a range right now over those 9 days really of about 4.5, nearly 5 points, but we could have a little bit more here to the downside ahead. So again, we'll see if price continues to hold these 62.50s, or do we start to break through them and lead to more weakness to the downside. So again, very important here to see how this develops the rest of the day. If we take a look at gold here, you'll see that gold has broken down away from the 1280s. You can see that one thing we mentioned very early on when we broke down on this day, I mentioned, if we drive a little bit, the first retest to 1290 will be very interesting because that's also where value is. And so to take value offered here and to come up and retest it, you know, typically speaking, bears try to keep it offered. Bulls were trying to keep the 1280s bid. So I mentioned 1280 to 1290 was kind of the near-term zone to watch ahead of FOMC and post. Now that FOMC is come and gone, we're now seeing the initial break to the downside. And again, with the rounded top up here and the way that this is played out, it appears like it's only a matter of time before we get that major breakout move. Is it going to come to the downside? If so, we have two major targets down here, about 1245 and 1211, that could be easily hit ahead. We have the prior pivot low here around 1200. That could be a very big target as well. So we'll see how this develops. Again, overall, failing to get above 1290, very, very important. And right now we're driving lower with a shot to reach new lows for this year. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this develops heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room.